Good morning, everyone. The Postgraduate Department of Computer Science, in collaboration with Drug Prevention Committee and Red Ribbon Club, feels delighted to welcome you all to the international webinar on healthy eating. Ms. Dimpy Komal, registered dietitian at Canadian Dietary Association and Indian Dietary Association, is the speaker for today. She is a certified water specialist, Canadian Society of Nutrition Management, Toronto. She has done MSc Dietetic and Food Service Management and PG Diploma in Clinical Dietetics. She will discuss various aspects and importance of healthy food and healthy eating. We will provide a feedback link for e-certificate in the chat box at the end of the session, so stay tuned for that and to learn about different types of food and their effects on health. Now I would like to invite Madam Principal to say a few words. Madam Principal, please.
Very good morning to everyone. And first of all, welcome to Mrs. Dimpy Komal, who is a registered dietitian of Canadian and Indian Dietary Association. Welcome, ma'am, in today's seminar. And the topic of the seminar, which is very much relevant these days, that is healthy eating. So I congratulate even the my postgraduate department of computer science for organizing such an interesting seminar and such a good seminar on the topic healthy eating. And I hope for the success of the seminar, and I think all the participants who are going to join and who have joined this seminar, they will be benefited. And once again, welcome Dimpy ma'am in this seminar. Thank you, Jay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Now let's begin with Ms. Dimpy Komal's presentation. Dimpy Komal, ma'am, you can start now and start with your presentation.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone, and special thanks to Principal Ma'am. And yeah, thank you to Computer Department who let me do this seminars for today. I hope I am audible. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay. So for the topic for today presentation is healthy eating. Okay. I want everybody to take a minute and think in your mind what you consider food that is healthy. I think a minute was long, but everybody must have gathered their thoughts on what they consider to be healthy. I have a picture in the background that shows some fruits, dry fruits, and some liquid that's a milk or yogurt. So, yeah, we can consider that also healthy. So, keep tuned with the things that came to your mind when you thought of healthy. We'll discuss that by the end of the session, too. Okay, so healthy eating. How can we eat healthy foods? This would be the first question when we think about, okay, what is healthy food? The next question come to our mind is, how can we eat healthy food? And then why we should eat healthy foods? And what food we should eat to feel good? These all questions are interrelated because if we think about why we should eat healthy, it's because our body needs nutrients and our body itself doesn't produce those nutrients. So that means we have to provide the body from outside, and we get these nutrients from our food. And how can we eat healthy? By choosing healthy food options. and let's discuss first about what is the human energy requirement. Why we're talking about we need to eat healthy and how we can eat healthy. What is the reason that we need to eat healthy? It's because we humans require energy. Energy is so much diverse in terms of definition. We learn energy in chemistry, we learn energy in physics, and so as we learn energy in bio. So when we talk about energy in context with the bio terms, our body, energy basically defines our capacity to do work. And how we get it from food. And energy requirement definitely changes with our age, with any physiological condition, or with any clinical or therapeutic condition. That means if we are having any clinical or chronic disease condition. So energy can simply define when we are talking in terms of bio or a body, it is a capacity to do work. Energy in food is a chemical energy, and that chemical energy our body converts into mechanical energy. Sorry, are we okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so our body converts that energy, the chemical energy, into mechanical energy. That's why we need energy. And when we talk about energy calculation, how the energy is measured, it is the similar units, calories. So we usually speak this thing that, oh, okay, if I'm eating something, I'm getting this much of calories from my food. Oh, so calorie is basically a unit by which energy is measured, and food energy is measured in kilocalories. I know in layman terms we usually use term calories only, but a food basically has kilocalories, not calories. So that's a big difference when we're talking about just in a vague sense. Okay, I have this much of calories, but basically we are eating kilocalories, not calories. So according to the definition, this is particularly a definition everybody must have gone through when we were in grade 10, then grade 11 and 12. What is kilocalorie? Kilocalorie is defined as the amount of the heat that is required to raise the temperature of 1 kilogram of water by 1 degree Celsius. So this definition remains same as the physics definition of the kilocalories. Let's talk about if we are getting the calories from the food, how much calories we get from the macronutrients that are present in our food. So when we're talking about the macronutrients, so macronutrients are the nutrients that actually provides us energy. So let's talk about first one, that is carbohydrate. So 1 gram of carbohydrate gives us 4 kilocalories. 1 gram of protein also gives us 4 kilocalories. And when we talk about 1 gram of fat, gives us 9 kilocalories. So if you see the comparison, we can see that it's almost more than the double the amount of the calories we get from carbohydrates or proteins that we get from the fats. And there's another thing given at the very bottom, that is alcohol. So alcohol does have calories in it. It has 7 kilocalories in 1 gram. So this is again a chemistry term that we are not talking about alcohol in terms of milligrams. We're talking about the grams of alcohol dissolved in the solution. But the calories from the alcohol is not considered as calories that body can use, because alcohol is a natural diuretic. That means body loses water when we consume alcohol, and at the same point of time it is a toxic substance for our liver. So that means what the liver has to detoxify it, and so these calories are not available. But I just wanted to put it to give a sense that yes, it does has calories. So people who take excess of alcohol, they do get calories, but those calories are not utilized by the body. It start getting stored in the body, and later it leads to the weight gain or then excessive weight gain in the form of obesity. Because we're talking about healthy, so I want you to touch base on this one too. All right, let's get into the next slide. Why body need energy? I know we talked about the mechanical form of energy from the food. The chemical energy get converted into mechanical that we use. So the mechanical would be when we are running, when we are physically active. So physical activities comes under those when we talk about the mechanical energy body uses. The other usage of the calories or the energy that we get from food is for body's own functioning. So our heart need energy to beat, our brain need energy to think, our legs need energy to walk. This will be more of a mechanical form of energy. Or breathing, and then eliminating waste from the body. So overall, if we see our body's functioning, that means our body requires energy for all the functions that are going on inside the body, as well as if we are doing any physical activity, body does need energy for that one too. So what happens when we consume any kind of extra nutrients, calories from the nutrients? So this excessive nutrients or the excessive calories from the nutrients get stored inside the body in the form of fats only. So yeah, this is tricky. Even if you eat the macronutrient carbohydrate in excessive amount, that is also going to get converted into fats, so as excessive amount of proteins as well as fats. So here's the thing, when we talk about excessive amount of proteins, I'm not trying to judge things, but in India, we usually lack proteins in our normal diet. So there wouldn't be a point when we will have excessive amount of protein that would get converted into fats. But let's look into the category of macronutrients. So the macronutrients are fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. That gives us calories or kilocalories. Let's talk about the first, the very important macronutrient for a body, that is protein. Yes, we did talk about that proteins give us calories or kilocalories, but proteins are usually not used by the body for energy giving purposes because proteins have more vital function to do for the body. That includes, it helps to build and maintain muscles, tissues, skin, nails, and hairs. It helps to slow the rise in the blood glucose levels. That's because when we eat proteins in a diet, so I'll be giving examples like meat, fish, poultry, nuts, tofu, milk. So in our vegetarian diet, we get the proteins from beans and lentils. We call them dal, soybeans, tofu. So these take time to get digested in the body when compared to carbohydrates like simple sugars. When we eat, they get digested by the body very quickly, and it gives rise to the blood sugars. But on the other hand, if we have proteins in our diet, it takes time for digestion. So probably 2 to 4 hours, they'll stay in the stomach, so that if you have proteins in a diet, you won't feel hungry after a little while. So there has been a category divided for the protein sources, animal sources and the plant sources. I know that might be something different thing, that in India, we usually consider milk as a vegetarian source of proteins. Whereas if we categorize milk, it basically comes under animal source of proteins. other than dairy products. So milk and milk products like our curd, our cheese, paneer, lassi, everything comes under this category of dairy products. I know I started from the very bottom because this was something I wanted to explain. It is just a cultural thing that we still consider milk as a vegetarian source of protein. Otherwise, it's an animal source of protein. Then apart from that, the animal source of protein includes poultry like chicken or eggs or fish or meat. Then the plant source, sorry, I'll just go back. So the plant sources of proteins would be dry beans, peas, nuts, tofu, or soybeans. Tofu is again a product of soybean, and it's very common right now in India too, right? And then grain products. So grains do have proteins in them, but they don't have much of proteins. So basically, these are the sources of protein. So we'll take a minute and look into these sources, that out of these sources, how many of them we have them on a regular basis and up to what amount. Let's think about it. Okay, why I wanted you to think about it, because at the very beginning of the session, I did talk about that our Indian typical diet usually lack in proteins. And that's why I wanted you to go through these sources to see if we take these sources throughout the day in all our major meals of the day, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Because proteins have different functions today in the body. So proteins do provide amino acids for the formation of the tissue during growth. So this is one of the important macronutrient for the children who are in the growth stages. And also during the pregnancy and lactation, it helps to build muscles, blood, skin, nails, and internal organs, help the body grow and repair itself. And that's something good about the body, because you get a cut, and if you have good proteins in your diet, the cut is going to get recovered soon. But if you don't have much of proteins in your diet, then it will take time to recover. It helps us fight diseases, and diseases does include the viral infections. So sometimes we do say that people have allergies or they are very sensitive to temperature change, and we do compare with the people, oh, the other person doesn't get infections too often, oh, he's quite of immune, right? He doesn't get infections. So that could be compared with the amount of the proteins in the diet. If you have good amount of proteins in a diet, your body can cope up with the different stress in the body, maybe in the form of any trauma or any cuts, or even if the viral infection gets into the body, it won't let it flourish. So again, if we talk about sources of functions of protein to replace the daily losses of the body protein. So yeah, if we got any cuts or something, if we are taking proteins in a diet, that will help to recover back. And then proteins are also in our enzymes in the body, blood proteins in the form of in hemoglobin. The globin is the protein, and certain hormones of protein nature. The very common one is the insulin, that is a protein-based hormone present inside the body that helps to maintain the blood sugar levels in the body. So I would like to go back to the protein slide again and think about that protein is not only a source of energy for the body, and body won't use proteins unless we are deficit in a diet for our carbohydrates or fats, because it has many other functions to perform in the body rather than just providing us energy. So I always call it is very, very costly nutrient for our body. So take that nutrient in adequate amount, and don't take it in excess also, because then it is going to be used as a cheap source of nutrient like carbohydrates of fats just to give us energy. We don't want it. We want protein to perform the important functions in the body. All right, let's get into our new slide and talk about another macronutrient, and that is carbohydrate. So when we talk about the percentage of the carbohydrate in our food or amount should be taken throughout the day, it ranges from 40 to 65%. This is almost would range according to the individual requirement. So carbohydrate is the source of energy to the body, a quick source of energy that body will use. So carbohydrate that we eat and drink directly affect our blood sugar levels or blood glucose levels. All digestible carbohydrates. Why I have used this term digestible, because we do eat some carbohydrates. They are not digested by the body, but still we have them in our meals. So all digestible, which body can digest, are eventually converted into glucose or simple sugars that body uses for energy. So this is the typical source of energy in the body and a quick source. What is carbohydrate? That's again a term which we have learned in our simple high secondary grades and then in grade 11 and 12. What are carbohydrates? Carbohydrates are the hydrates or carbon. So they have carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen molecule. So if we categorize carbohydrates, sugars means simple sugars. So simple sugars can be divided further into monosaccharides, disaccharides, and oligosaccharides. So if we talk about monosaccharide, that means a simple sugar molecule. We all know we get it from glucose. Glucose is an example of simple sugar. And the other example is the fruit that contains glucose, and it's grapes. So our grapes contain glucose. Then we come to di, that means two carbohydrate molecules together. Disaccharides, example is fructose, the sugar that is present in our fruits. Our cane sugar, the simple sugar, the table sugar which we use is produced from sugar cane. So it is again an example of fructose. And then lactose. Lactose is the sugar that is found in our milk. It is again a disaccharide. Then are the starches. Starches are the sugars which are big or long chains. So when we talk about mono, that means single, then di, two, oligo, a small chain from 6 to 8 molecules. And then we talk about starches and number of molecules together of sugars. And these starches are found in our cereals, in our pulses, and these are big chains. So these big chains need to be digested by the body acid as well as enzymes so that they get converted into simple sugars which body can use. And they would stay in the stomach for a longer period of time because they need to be digested. So that means the sugars that will come out of these starches will take longer time in comparison to the simple sugars, mono or di, easy to digest. Then comes another class of carbohydrates. They're called fibers. I'll be talking about fiber a little in a while in detail. But let me give a brief idea about that. These are those carbohydrates that are not digested by the body. So in the previous slide, I did talk about the carbohydrates that are digested by the body. So this is the kind of fiber that body cannot digest. Let's see the examples of carbohydrates. When we are talking about the examples of these carbohydrates, the grains like bread, rice, pasta. For our Indian diet, we have chapatis, we have rotis, parathas, all from the whole grain cereal or the refined cereal too. That include maida or rice or a barley or a cornmeal. Then the vegetables that include all the vegetables. So if you talk about Indian vegetable right now, about karelas, then gourd that we call ghia, then gajar, mooli, potatoes. They're rich in starches, and peas and beans. Then comes fruits. So fruits will have a simple fructose also, as well as it will have fiber. Like example would be apples, oranges, berries. Then comes legumes that include the protein, plant-based sources. That includes beans and lentils, example like rajma, rogi, green beans, pili dal, arhar dal, and then the others would include all the simple candies and sugars, ice cream, fruit juices, candies. So let's look back and see that if I talk about the typical Indian diet, we usually didn't have these candies and ice creams in a diet, though we had another sources of like sugars in a diet that included direct fruits. And then for the grains also, we have other grains like chapatis and whole grains, basically. That was the typical Indian diet. Okay, so when we talk about when we're eating anything in excess, especially the carbohydrates, what's gonna happen? When this excess of carbohydrate that is eaten by the body, we eat, it is going to get converted into glycogen, that is the stored form of the glucose, and it is stored in the liver. So that would be the first thing when we are doing any strenuous exercise to provide energy to the body. So it has to be stored in the liver as an emergency source of energy, the first emergency source of energy for the body. So let's talk back about fibers. So fiber can be divided into the structural part of the plants. That means in skin of vegetables, fruits, and grains and legumes. Then comes the non-starch polysaccharides. That means the body doesn't get any energy or calories from them. That includes cellulose and hemicellulose. It does include pectins, gums, and mucilages. And that's interesting to know that these are, excuse me, these are basically mucilages. I'd like to give you an example. Like we eat bindi, the ladyfinger, that contains mucilages fiber, and it's very healthy. And that's why it's always being promoted should be eaten by people who have diabetes, because this type of fiber body takes time to digest, and more than that, body doesn't get any calories out of it. And that's the best part about it, because you have to eat almost 60% of the carbohydrates in our diet, and these sources will not include any calories in it, but still you're getting the carbohydrates. Then are called lignins, cureins, and tannins. So if you talk about lignins, cureins, and tannins, these are present in the skin of our pulses like beans, or kidney beans, or chanas, black chanas. So if we look into the Indian way of reducing the lignins or the lignins or the cureins and tannins, please excuse me for a minute, just a second. Sorry about that. Just wanted to have a sip of water. All right, so if we talk about these lignans and curins and tannins, we usually soak our chanas, black chanas, or rajma overnight. That helps the lignans and curins to get dissolved in the water. And what we do early in the morning, we just drain out the water in which we have soaked these beans, and then we cook them. Soaking in water helps to tenderize or soften the lignans or tannins and to reduce the amount of lignans and tannins. And that's the best thing. And that's why it's been promoted in our culture that these gas forming beans should be soaked overnight so that they give less stress to the body, right? So it's the best thing to do to reduce the amount of curins and tannins. Well, just to touch base on, tannins are also present in the tea that we drink regularly. I think we can skip this file. So let's talk about the benefits of fiber. And when we are talking about the carbohydrates, and we want fiber to be in excess in the food or diet, what benefits they would provide us. So the benefits include the blood glucose control after consuming a meal, because it is not going to get readily digested by the body. It will take time to digest, it will fill the stomach, it will take time to get out of the stomach, so you won't feel hungry. And the second is it's not digested, therefore it doesn't affect the blood sugars. Fiber can be divided into insoluble fiber and soluble. So the examples would be when we talk about pectins or mucilages. These are the example of soluble fibers, whereas the insoluble is the skin part of the fruits and vegetables. We did talk about the plant-based sources for the fiber. That includes whole grains, vegetables, beans, peas, lentils. So when increasing fiber in the diet, do so slowly, because our body is not used to having enough of the fiber in the diet, and we suddenly just increase the amount of fiber. It is going to trouble our digestive system. So any change, the body is not going to take it very healthy, right? So take time to include gradually the amount of the fiber in the diet. So if I'm talking about that, let's take an example. If we are not in a habit of eating salad, and you suddenly decided, oh, I should have a salad in my diet. Let's have it 3 times in a meal with my meals. Shouldn't be starting with the 3 times. Let's start with maybe once in a day, or then gradually twice a day, and then gradually land it into 3 times a day. Or just including the amount of the salad that you're going to eat once in a day to divide it throughout the day. And then gradually keep on increasing, because suddenly increase in the fiber in the diet is going to cause body to produce or bloating, or feel more distended, or maybe discomfort. So let's go slowly. All right. Now we are on to the third macronutrient, very rich macronutrient, usually in a Punjabi diet, and especially if we are living in Amritsar, we have that in most of the food, yummy, delicious food what we get here, right? Or our kulchas have to be buttered, or a buttered chicken has to have an extra butter, or a roasted chicken has to have an extra butter. So what are fats? Example of fats would be all the oils that we eat, butter or ghee. So oils does include our sunflower oil, saff oil, canola oil, peanut oil. If we can divide the fats, we can divide them into simpler form, just like carbohydrates. They are triglycerides, glycerol, that is only one triglyceride in a unit. And then fatty acids. Fatty acids can be divided into categories like saturated, monounsaturated, polyunsaturated. With the polyunsaturated can be further divided into omega-6 and omega-3. We'll talk about them. Phospholipids and sterols. So example of sterol will be cholesterol, and the plant-based sterol example is phytosterols. So they are the healthy ones. So when we talk about saturated fats, the sources of saturated fats would be the animal sources of fats. So saturated fats does include hydrogenated fatty acids. So they are basically produced by addition of hydrogen into the oils to make them more stabilized, increase their shelf life, protect against oxidations. The examples are margarine, shortening, baked goods. So in Indian context, we used to have hydrogenated fatty acid, very common example. I shouldn't be quoting that, but I do remember from my childhood, we used to have dalda ghee. So the dalda ghee was the example of hydrogenated fatty acids. But I guess we don't get it anymore, but it is a good idea to read the ingredient list. If it says hydrogenated, it shouldn't be consumed. Why? Because it can increase our risk of developing cardiovascular diseases or heart diseases. So let's look into the role of the fats. So there's a huge list, just like proteins. So fats, it's not like if we are trying to eat healthy, we should avoid eating fats. No. We should have fats for our body because fats does a lot of functions for the body. It does provide energy. It enhances the palatability. That is one of the factors that the Amritsari food is the most famous in the world, that it has palatability. It's very, very yummy to taste. Then it influences the texture of the food. So when we have butter on a paratha, it does look very yummy and texture changes to more soft and greasy. It enables the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins. So this would be the major reason why we shouldn't be excluding fats from a diet. Because if we are not taking fats at all in a diet, it is going to cause us deficiencies of the fat-soluble vitamins that include vitamin A, D, K, and E. And they are very much important for the body too. Insulate the body. So cushioning in the body, layering in the body comes from the fat layer. So it's usually being said that people who are very sensitive to the temperatures, they have very less amount of fats in the body. So they will feel more cold, they'll feel more heat. When you have a layer of fats in the body, you have a kind of insulation that prevents you having thermosensitivity in the body. That means you don't sense temperature changes much because you have a layer over you. Then it protects organs against shock. So that includes, like, we have a layer of fat around our eyeballs. We have a layer of fat around our knees, especially the joints, to protect them. And then help body to use carbohydrates and proteins. And that's something interesting, because if we have enough of the carbohydrates and proteins in a diet, body is not going to use fats as a source of energy for the body. It is going to store it and use it later. So here comes the thing, that if body is not going to use something and it's just going to store it, so why not to take it in a reasonable amount so that it's not storing too much that can increase weight for us. And so if we talk about saturated fats, they can increase our risk of developing heart disease, so as the hydrogenated fats. But the good thing is, the fats that are called unsaturated fats, that include oils, it reduces the risk of developing heart disease or cardiovascular diseases. So here, if I have given a reference sheet to compare the type of the oils and the amount of the saturated fats in it. So when you go down to the list, you see right on the very lower end of the slide, we have that gives a suggestion. Let's get a little up and does talk about saturated fats, monounsaturated fats content in all the oils. And looking into this, you see the saturated fats amount is highest in coconut oil. Yes, so it is a plant-based oil, but it has saturated fats in it, and that is one of the exception for the oils, which has even saturated fats more than butter fat or palm oil. So to keep a balance between the different types of the oil, when we look into the categories, you can see that sunflower oil, corn oil, olive oil, they are pretty much low in the saturated fats. And they do have good amount of monounsaturated fats too. So yes, so when I know being North Indians, we don't use coconut oil very often in comparison to the South Indian population. We have a source of saturated fats from milk and milk products. So when we talk about how to reduce the amount of the fat from milk and milk products, the excellent example will be we actually boil milk, and after boiling, we let it settle so the fat comes on the top of the milk. That's what we call malai. We can separate the malai from the milk to make it less in saturated fats. The more you take out the malai from the milk, the more it is going to be less in saturated fats. On the contrary, if you look into the amount of the proteins and rest of the nutrients in that kind of milk where we have removed the malai from it or the fat from the milk, it hardly makes a difference. There might be very minor changes in terms of the protein content and the rest of the nutrients. So it's pretty much a good idea to take out the malai. There are many the pasteurized milk also, which are available, having 1% milk fat. Yeah, the yellow packet, I still remember that. So that would be very low in saturated fats, though it will have good amount of proteins as well as vitamins and minerals. I know there is a one jigs, or people do think that it doesn't have any nutrients in it, but the fact is that it has all the required essential nutrients in it, but doesn't have the bad nutrient that is the saturated fatty acid. Good thing is you can use it as your snack, you can drink it with the meals. It's not heavy because it doesn't have fat content in it, and you drink it and you won't feel like, oh, people do say that it's just like water. Yes, it does, because it has less of fat in it, but it doesn't mean that it is not nutritious. It is very much nutritious. Would like to skip. Oh, okay, it's just discussing the different type of fats. I think we have already discussed this one. We can skip this one too. So when we're talking about the saturated fats can increase the cholesterol in the body too. And this is a more kind of a test which is done in the categorization of lipid test that is done to evaluate the fat in the body. And this cholesterol is not good fat that is stored in the body. So what will be the sources of cholesterol in a diet? Again, the animal foods would be the sources of cholesterol in a diet, along with the exception of the coconut oil. So animal foods like meat, eggs, fish, shellfish, poultry, dairy products with fats, organ meats like liver and kidneys. Why are we talking about liver here? Because that is the one that stores the fats as well as fat soluble nutrients or vitamins A, D, K, E in it. So are fats healthy? Yes, they are. If they're not saturated and if they're not going to affect our cholesterol, we should take fats in a diet, but in a limited amount. How much we'll discuss about that too. So let's talk about the next one, that is the water. So water is a basic nutrient that actually dissolve all the rest of the nutrients, and that helps the body to absorb the rest of the major macronutrients in the body and to provide energy to the body. So when we look into the percentage of the water inside the body, it's almost 60% in adults, whereas it is greater in children and lesser in females, obese people, and elderly people. Water again has a role of shock absorber, body temperature regulation, maintain blood volume, lubricant, and cushion the joints. Yeah, that's interesting. When we talk about the needs in India uh, or anywhere, people do think that that the joints have no lubrication left, and the lubrication can come only from the oil or the greasy thing. That's why joints are not working properly. On the contrary, it's not the greasy part or the oil thing in our diet or in our body that provides the lubrication or cushions to the joints. It's basically the water in between the joints that provides the lubricant and cushions. Sources. So fruits and vegetables are the excellent source of water for us. Whereas when we compare to the meat and the cheese, it comes down to 50%. So having more fruits and vegetables will be a good idea. And water can be the best beverage of choice. I know we are changing with the choices of beverage. So the recommendations would be depending on the type of the diet we are eating. That means if we are more eating meat in our diet, we need more water to drink. Activity. So if we are hyperactive or somebody who is an athlete, does require extra water. So as the environmental temperature, so that's something who's a person who's working out all day in sun would require more water. So as in humid environment, as soon as I would say June or July hit in northern India, the area becomes too humid. So you need to get dehydrated. So not to get dehydrated, good amount of water can help you keep hydrated. Yeah, it's other way around. If you won't drink the water, you get dehydrated. And if you will drink good amount of water, you keep yourself hydrated. So I would say adult recommendations would generally be having almost 10 cups of water in a day. So one cup would be 200 mils, 250 ml. So if you look into the picture, that if person is having almost 2,000 kilocalories a day, they should drink almost 2 to 3 liters of water in a day. But this water does include everything that includes fluid or water in it. That means milk or water or juice. But yes, we cannot say that the water or the fluid that is present in the beverage, like alcohol or caffeine beverages. So caffeine beverages does include our tea, coffee, and black colas that contain caffeine. They are considered as water because they are considered as diuretic. That means they tend to take water from the cells. So they're not going to keep us hydrated. And that reminds me always a term that in our culture when I was growing, my mom used to tell me that people do say people who drink tea, they become tan. So why they become tan? Because they lose their water from the body. So the skin is not hydrated. That's why they look tan. I don't know how much it is true, but yes, you keep losing water from the body if you're having more of caffeine beverages, though it's still fluid what you're taking in, but gives up more fluid from the body. Okay, so looking to the bigger picture, we talked about carbohydrates, we talked about proteins, we talked about fats in a diet. So what would we should be eating when we talk about at the very beginning of the session that, okay, healthy means what for me and in what sense. So if you look into this picture, it has beautiful veggies in it. And trust me, what we get in India, we don't get anywhere, I don't know, anywhere else in the world, because we get the fresh produce. They are right from the farms delivered to us. We hardly eat stored or processed foods, and that's the best thing about it. They are low in chemicals. So having more fruits and vegetables which are readily available would be a good idea, rather than having juices or any processed form of fruits or vegetables. Having whole grains, that's what we've been grown on. That was what our culture was about. We used to get our grains, and then we used to get grains grounded, and then we used to have the atta, and then we used to use rotis, and we make fresh breads every day in every meals rather. So having a lot of fiber in it, and it does have vitamins and minerals. And the more the flour is refined, like maida, it loses out its vitamin mineral content. So it would be a good idea having whole grains with the fiber without processing, like without losing it, because the more we lose fiber from the cereal, it becomes more soft, more softer texture than the with the fiber. But that's the trick. The with the fiber thing is more healthier. I could find this one, the Indian food pyramid. I know, I'm sorry about this one, that it's not very clear, but I can explain that. So at the very top of it, basically, it has sugars, the simple sugars like candies or chocolates or juices, much of a processed and simple sugars. So the top means we should be consuming in a very minimum amount. When we are coming down, it has oils in it. So when we talk about the basic regular recommendation for healthy individuals, we shouldn't be taking more than 2 to 3 teaspoons of oil in any form. Either it is on a roti, either it is used to cook our veggies or paranthas. So a basic question comes, okay, you're telling me I should take 2 to 3 teaspoons of oil in a day. How am I going to calculate that, right? Very simple. So if the food is being cooked for a family of 6 people, and we are just using maybe 1 tablespoon, that means 15 milliliters, and that means you're not getting more than 15 mLs divided by 6, right? So it's not much. So we are still right on track. I think the measure of the oil that we consume would come from if we grease our rotis or make paranthas. But that doesn't mean we should stop them eating, but we can reduce the amount of fat we are using on it. Ample then could be our fruits and vegetables. And then that's in a basic diet that we eat maybe a bowl of veggie with 2 or 3 chapatis, right? So that means we do get enough of the carbohydrates from the cereal we are eating. But that cereal has to have fiber in it. Otherwise, that would go right on the very middle of the pyramid, because it will be digested very quickly from the body. So if you look into the basic messages, how to eat healthy, I would say avoid overeating to prevent overweight and obesity. So that simply means that our Indian diet is awesome, healthiest diet if we stick to our roots. The only thing is that we shouldn't be overeating anything. And then exercise regularly and be physically active to maintain ideal body weight. Yeah, here comes the thing that our lifestyle has changed so much that we don't walk much. We don't even think about that. We would prefer electronic vehicles or energy-based vehicles to use to come to our workplace. That's something can be considered if we think that we can go to gym later in the day for 2 hours. And if we can alter that just by walking to a workplace, that would be a good idea too, because in that way also you'll be using your body calories, you'll be doing your physical activity, and at the same time you'll be giving a good relaxation to the environment too. Restrict for the salt. That means we can have a minimum intake of salt to 1 teaspoon in the whole day. So 1 teaspoon means including everything that we are going to eat throughout the day should have not more than 1 teaspoon of salt in the day. How we can calculate, I think we don't need to calculate. The only thing we can see is that we shouldn't be putting it like over our fruits or vegetables or anything. A table salt should be avoided if we are just sprinkling on anything that we are eating. That should be avoided. Ensure to use safe and clean food. That would be one thing, that we can wash fruits and vegetables properly with water. That's it. And we can have them. And then adopt the right pre-cooking processes and appropriate cooking methods. That's what our culture is about. We do soak our beans and lentils to help them get digested by the body more easily. Drinking plenty of water and take the beverage in moderation. Well, if we look into the typical Indian beverages, we don't have much of sugar-laden beverages in our cultural meal diet. But the thing is, nowadays what we get, like colas and juices, I would suggest before you drink those, just look once onto the ingredient list and see how much sugars they have. I bet you're not gonna drink that a lot, because that has a lot of sugar in it. Minimize the use of processed food rich in salt, sugar, and fats. Here's the thing, because if we are going to store something for a longer period of time, let's take an example of pickles. What we produce on a regular basis, when there are summers and there are winters, we make our pickles, right? And what we put in them to have the better shelf life for them to stay longer, we put excess of salt, we put excess of oil, we put excess of sugars in them. So, but if you compare how much of pickle we eat with the meals, that's not in much, right? But when we look into the processed food, packed foods, frozen foods, it's not that they're bad. You just have to watch out for any extra salt, sugar, fats added to them. If they don't have, their frozen vegetables would be as good as the regular vegetables. But just have a comparison if they're economical or not. If they're not, there's no fun of spending extra bunch of money just to get the frozen vegetables, and if you can get it in the market for cheap, right? And include the micronutrients rich foods in the diet of elderly people, as well as for the growing children, pregnant females, that help them to be fit and active. So I have come to the very end of my presentation, and I would like you all to take another 30 seconds, just to think over again. What would you think what your diet would be? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Thank you for it. Yeah. Thank you for an informative presentation. Hearing about proteins, carbohydrates, fats, fiber, and the comparisons was very interesting. I believe the knowledge conveyed through your presentation must have benefited the participants. We appreciate you taking the time and effort to share this useful information with us. I would like to take this opportunity to express our heartfelt gratitude to Madam Principal for her unwavering support, guidance, and direction in organizing such events. I also like to express my gratitude to all the teaching and non-teaching staff members for their cooperation. Thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar and contributing to its success. We appreciate your time with us today. It's been a great pleasure. Have a great day ahead. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.